Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about the US-Japan trade deal. It's an interesting deal, very unusual. Never heard anything like that. There is one particular aspect to the deal which is very perplexing, and it is of extremely high volume, about $550 billion worth of Japanese commitment to basically giving the money to the US. And I'll tell you how it's as if Japan is literally buying 10% off the tariffs. If there was no deal, then the tariffs on Japan would have been 25% starting 1st of August. And now the deal entails 15% tariffs on all Japanese goods. But there's a peculiarity to it, which I think can be very threatening and dangerous, not just to the US, but to India also. So I'll talk about how this particular deal is going to affect India and also the US negatively. India still is under negotiations, so it may or may not affect India. But India could include that in its deal, but it definitely impacts the US negatively, or at least US companies negatively. And I will talk to you about that. But before that, please subscribe to Conversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. And for those of you who are members, please remember we are having a Zoom meeting for members only on Sunday, July 27th at 12 o'clock US time and 9:30 p.m. India time. So this is the deal that Donald Trump announced with Japan. The tariffs, the final figure on tariffs is going to be 15%. It's brought down from 25%. Japan is going to open up some of its markets for the United States. There's not much in terms already because Japan had already opened its agricultural sector to the US. There are some additional requirements that were there for American cars that were being exported to Japan. Japan is going to get rid of that. But in exchange for this reduction in tariffs from 25% to 15%, which is actually a very good deal if Donald Trump insists on maintaining, as he has said so far, that minimum 10% tariffs on all countries, on all products, then basically Japan is paying only 5% additional tariffs as reciprocal tariffs. But what Japan is going to do is basically is going to give $550 billion in loans and grants and loan guarantees to the US. Really, to the US. And the US government is going to decide in which directions or in which industries and which sector the US would like to invest that. So, for example, for the next 2 or 3 years, if all of that money comes in by then President Trump is going to decide where that money is going to be invested. So he may decide that we're going to invest this. I want somebody to invest in building, from generic pharmaceuticals, antibiotics in Texas he won't invest in California, but some other red state to create jobs. And so they're going to find a third party, not a Japanese company, most probably an American company, to start that particular factory. The investment is going to come from Japan. And guess what? 90% of the profit is going to go to the US taxpayer. I don't know who gets the 10%, not the owner, since the owner is the United States, the third party. I guess if you're running that company, you will get a salary as a CEO. So the US government is going to own this investment and the profits. I was listening to Howard Lutnick on MSNBC this morning, and he was explaining this is extremely unprecedented, unusual. I've never heard of any deal like this between two countries. So let me quickly say it again so that you get it. Japan is going to give $550 billion to Donald Trump, who's going to decide where and in what field and what industry it's going to be invested. And then a third party is going to run that investment. I would love to see if he gives it to members of his family, but obviously major supporters are going to get access to this money. And of the profits that are generated, 90% of those profits are going to go to the American taxpayer. this is very interesting. Sounds like socialism, by the way. But it's very, very interesting that 90% of that is going to go to the American taxpayer. And so this is a very interesting thing. We will see whether it happens. It's quite possible that the current chief prime minister of Japan will be overturned and the Japanese may not fully commit to this deal, whatever ratification process they have at their end. And we will see whether it really materializes. But this is what the two parties apparently has agreed upon. I looked for some Japanese responses but couldn't find any. It's too early for that. But Donald Trump and his administration is really celebrating this victory. This is a major deal. Japan is one of the top 5 trading partners for the United States in terms of exports. Japan and the U.S. trade is about $270 billion. Japan's exports about $150 billion worth of stuff to the United States. 1/3 of it, about $55 billion, are just automobiles and automobile parts. So that's very important. And the US exports about $77 billion worth of stuff. So the total trade actually goes above close to $250 billion with US and Japan. And the trade deficit is also close to $70 billion between the US and Japan. So the trade between US and Japan is about $100 billion or $120 billion more than US-India trade. So before I talk to you about how it impacts India, let me say how it impacts the US. This should be a source of tremendous problem for the American automobile manufacturers. So for example, not 100% of American cars are made in America. So whether it's General Motors or whatever other brand that you're looking at, they are made overseas. A lot of them are made in China and elsewhere. So let's assume that even 60% of American cars are made in the US, but 40% or less are made overseas. So when those parts are imported to the US, they're going to be tariffed at 25% if they're coming from, say, South Korea. If they're coming from China, then they will be at 30% tariffs. Whereas Hondas and Toyotas and Nissans, which are coming from Japan, will be coming in at 15% tariffs. So Japan is going to have an advantage over American manufacturers and American automobile manufacturers because of Trump tariffs. And actually, this question was asked to Howard Lutnick, and his answer was basically, don't manufacture overseas, manufacture here. And obviously, when you manufacture there, you'll have to have new investments for making whatever parts they are. And clearly, the reason why you went abroad was for economic reasons, and now you're coming back, which means that your car is going to get expensive. The cost of manufacturing is going to go up. So if you're not going to pay tariffs, you're going to pay in higher cost of manufacturing, higher labor cost, etc. Donald Trump feels that this $550 billion of Japanese investment is going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs in the United States. We shall see what happens with that. So in a way, there's a negative aspect for the US companies that they are going to have to pay tariffs more than the Japanese automobile manufacturers, unless they really try to make the entire car in the US. And I think then it'll be, as it is, American cars are actually quite expensive. And so they will price themselves out. I think many of the foreign cars, in spite of the tariffs, may turn out to be cheaper than the US. For India, this could be an interesting thing because Howard Lutnick was saying that for smaller countries who have limited amount of trade with the US, it could be around 15% tariffs or even less, or they may be just paying 10% basic, that the minimum that Donald Trump wants to impose. But for bigger countries, and by bigger he means countries which are bigger trade partners, there is going to be more tariffs. So for India, which is a major trading partner, for India, the US is the #1 trading partner. And India is in the top 10 now trading partners for the US. So for the US and India trade, that he clearly expects it to be 15% or more. But Now the question is, because India has so many caveats that I do not want to open up our agricultural market to the US. We do not want to open our dairy products market to the US. We want lesser tariffs on the stuff that we export, especially the jewels and car parts. The Indians are not happy with the 50% tariffs on aluminum and steel, and there is also the coming tariff on pharmaceuticals, which Donald Trump said will be like, what, 200%? So I don't know whether India is already negotiating that potential or not, because right now, pharmaceuticals is exempted from this entire reciprocal tariff system. And India exports about $10 billion worth of pharmaceuticals to the US. So for the US, I think for India, the Japanese deal should come as a bit of a scary thing, because Trump is not happy with the $48 billion deficit that the US has with India, and he has hinted that they can buy F-35s. They'll have to buy some shit, literally, to offset that deficit. And Trump has offered F-35s. India has shown very little interest in that. And India wants to, I don't know what, make its own planes, wants to buy jet engines from the US. So we'll see what happens. Is it possible that Donald Trump will try and pressure India to invest in the US, like Japan, like put up $100 billion for investments which the US government is going to, it's like the US government entering the market. The US government is going to decide what is going to be invested in, what sector, who is going to run that company, and of course the profits, 90% of that apparently are going to go to US taxpayers. So I think the Japanese deal is interesting, no doubt about it. And it is very difficult to just do the math and predict whether it's going to be beneficial or not in the long run. Plus, of course, the question of whether the Japanese parliament, etc., do they need to ratify this agreement, and will they do that, or will there be essentially a regime change and people simply vote out this current government for its terrible negotiations with the United States? Okay, so that's what I wanted to share with you. And so it's an interesting development. I'm going to keep a close eye on this whole tariff issue and trade negotiations, etc. And so please keep in touch. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and share this video with your socio-political network. Until next time, I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. Take care.